The sun was setting as Maya Washington finished packing up her desk at the FBI field office. Most of her coworkers had already left for the weekend, but Maya had stayed behind to review one last file. That was typical of her, always going the extra mile, always pushing herself harder than anyone else. She had to. Maya ran her hand over her braided hair tucked away in a neat bun inside. The corruption case she was working on was taking its toll. For months, her team had been investigating reports of police misconduct in several precincts across the state. The work was important but draining, especially because it put her in an awkward position with local law enforcement who sometimes saw the FBI as outsiders meddling in their business. Heading out finally, Agent Darnell poked his head around the corner of her cubicle. His tie loosened after a long day. Maya nodded, slipping the case files into her secure bag. Yes, I'm going to visit my grandmother this weekend. She hasn't been feeling well. The one who lives in Riverside? Darnell asked, leaning against her desk. That's the one, Maya confirmed, standing up and stretching her back. It's been too long since I've seen her. Riverside, Darnell repeated, his expression growing serious. Be careful out there, Washington. That town has a history. Maya knew what he meant. Her grandmother had told her plenty of stories about Riverside's troubled past. The small town had been a flashpoint during the civil rights movement, and change had come slowly. According to her grandmother, some parts of town still operated like it was 1965, not 2025. I'll be fine, Maya assured him with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I'm just going to check on Grandma Rose, bring her some groceries, and come back Sunday evening. Darnell nodded, but his concern was evident. As one of the few other black agents in their field office, he understood the unspoken realities Maya faced. Call if you need anything, he said simply. Maya grabbed her purse and coat, nodding at her colleague as she headed toward the elevator. At 34, she had been with the Bureau for almost 10 years, working her way up from a rookie agent to leading her own task force. The glass ceiling had cracked a bit, but it wasn't broken. Not yet. As the elevator descended to the parking garage, Maya thought about changing out of her formal work clothes before hitting the road. But the 2-hour drive to Riverside was already going to put her at her grandmother's place later than she wanted. Better to just get on the road now and change when she arrived. The traffic leaving the city was lighter than usual, which Maya took as a good sign. Maybe this weekend would be the peaceful break she needed. Her car, a sensible navy blue sedan, hummed quietly as she merged onto the highway, leaving behind the gleaming buildings of downtown. Maya loved this part of her drives, the in-between space where she wasn't Agent Washington with all the responsibilities that came with the badge, but wasn't quite just Maya either. It was a time to think, to process, to breathe. Her phone rang through the car's speaker system, her grandmother's name lighting up the display. Hey, Grandma Rose, Maya answered, smiling at the familiar voice that came through. Baby girl, where are you? I made your favorite sweet potato pie and it's getting cold. Maya laughed. Grandma, I told you I wouldn't be there until around 8. And you didn't have to cook, you're supposed to be resting. Resting? Rose scoffed. Child, I've been resting for 2 weeks and I'm about to lose my mind. The doctor said I had a minor heart episode, not that I was dying. A minor heart episode, Maya repeated, her voice turning serious. Grandma, you had a heart attack. Semantics, Rose dismissed. Now, how far out are you? And did you bring those files I asked for? Maya shook her head, though her grandmother couldn't see her. Rose had been asking to see some of Maya's case files, the non-classified ones, since she'd told her about the police corruption investigation. Rose had worked as a civil rights activist in her youth and still had a keen interest in justice issues. About an hour and a half, and yes, I brought some articles you can read. Not case files, Grandma. You know I can't share those. Rose grumbled good-naturedly. All these years paying taxes and my own granddaughter won't even show me what my money is funding. I'll tell you all about it when I get there, okay? Now go sit down and take it easy. I mean it. After hanging up, Maya felt the tension in her shoulders ease a bit. Her grandmother had that effect on her, grounding her, reminding her of what was really important. An hour into her drive, the landscape had changed from urban sprawl to scattered suburbs, and finally to the rural outskirts that surrounded Riverside. Maya decided to stop for gas and take the opportunity to change into more comfortable clothes. She pulled into a service station just off the highway, filled up her tank, and grabbed her overnight bag from the trunk. In the small restroom, Maya changed out of her tailored suit into jeans, a casual sweater, and comfortable boots. She removed her FBI badge and credentials from her blazer pocket and tucked them into her purse instead of keeping them on her belt clip. This weekend was about family, not work. Back on the road, the final stretch to Riverside took her through increasingly familiar territory. Though Maya had grown up in the city, she'd spent many summers here with her grandmother. She knew these winding roads, the old oak trees that lined certain streets, the corner store where Grandma Rose would buy her ice cream on hot days. As she crossed the town line, Maya felt that familiar mix of warmth and unease that Riverside always stirred in her. This place held so many good memories, but it was also where her grandfather had faced harassment from local police decades ago, where her mother, as a teenager, had been followed around stores by suspicious shopkeepers, where even now her grandmother occasionally mentioned neighbors who still haven't gotten used to having us around after 40 years in the same house. Maya drove past the town's small business district, a main street, with a hardware store, a diner, a bank, and a few other shops, most closed for the evening. The streets were quiet at this hour, just a few people walking dogs or heading home from late shifts. Maya noticed a police cruiser parked outside the diner and instinctively checked her speed, though she knew she wasn't driving fast. Her phone buzzed with a text from her grandmother. "Pie is done. Bring milk if you can." Maya smiled and took a detour to the small grocery store on Oak Street, one of the few places still open. Inside, she picked up milk, some fresh fruit, and a few other items she knew her grandmother would need. The cashier, a young white woman with bright red hair, gave her a curious look but was polite enough. "You visiting someone in town?" she asked as she scanned the items. "My grandmother," Maya replied with a polite smile. "Rose Washington over on Maple Drive." The cashier's expression warmed immediately. "Oh, Ms. Rose. She taught me piano when I was little. Tell her Kathy's girl says hello." "I will," Maya promised, feeling a bit of the tension ease. This was the other side of small-town life, the connections, the community memory that spanned generations. Back in her car, with just 10 minutes left to her grandmother's house, Maya turned onto a quieter residential street. The houses here were older, well kept for the most part, with large yards and tall trees. Her grandmother's neighborhood. Maya was thinking about how good that sweet potato pie would taste when she noticed the flashing lights in her rearview mirror. A police cruiser had appeared behind her, signals blaring. Maya frowned, mentally reviewing her driving. She hadn't been speeding. Her taillight wasn't out as far as she knew, and she'd made a complete stop at the last intersection. But she knew better than to question a traffic stop, especially here, especially alone, especially at night. She pulled over carefully, positioning her car properly at the curb. The training kicked in automatically, hands at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel. Interior light turned on so the officer could see inside the car clearly. Window rolled down. Maya took a deep breath, her FBI training warring with childhood warnings from her family. As a federal agent, she knew exactly how traffic stops should proceed. As a black woman in a town like Riverside, she knew how they sometimes did proceed, despite regulations and protocols. The officer was taking his time approaching her vehicle. Maya could see him in the side mirror, a tall white man, probably in his 40s, moving with deliberate slowness toward her car. Her purse with her credentials sat on the passenger seat, within reach but not in hand. She waited, perfectly still, for whatever would come next. Through the open window came the sharp smell of autumn leaves and the faint scent of her grandmother's neighborhood. Wood smoke from someone's fireplace, the sweet smell of ripening apples from the orchard a mile away. Maya focused on these familiar sensations, keeping her breathing steady as the officer finally reached her window. What should have been a routine moment was about to become something else entirely, though Maya didn't know it yet. She only knew that she was minutes away from her grandmother's sweet potato pie, from the comfort of family, from a brief respite from her demanding job. But first, this unexpected detour, one that would change everything in ways she couldn't imagine. The police officer tapped on Maya's window with 2 knuckles, even though it was already rolled down. His flashlight beam swept across her face, momentarily blinding her. Maya squinted but kept her hands visible on the steering wheel. "License and registration," the officer said flatly, without introducing himself or explaining why he'd pulled her over. "Good evening, officer," Maya responded politely. "May I ask why I've been stopped?" The officer, his name tag read Brennan, ignored her question. License and registration, he repeated, his tone hardening. Now, Maya nodded slowly. I'm going to reach for my wallet and my purse on the passenger seat, okay? Officer Brennan didn't respond, but his hand shifted to rest on his holstered weapon, a move Maya immediately noticed. It wasn't standard procedure for a simple traffic stop, and her training at the FBI sent up red flags. Keeping her movements deliberate and slow, Maya reached across to her purse. She could feel Brennan watching her every move as she removed her wallet and extracted her driver's license. Then she opened the glove compartment for her registration and insurance information. She handed the documents to Brennan, who studied her DC license with narrowed eyes. "You're a long way from home," he commented, looking from the license to her face. "What brings you to Riverside?" "I'm visiting my grandmother. She lives on Maple Drive," Maya explained. "Rose, Washington. She's lived here for over 40 years. Brennan's expression didn't change as he examined her registration. "And why are you taking the back streets? Main Street would get you to Maple a lot faster." The question struck Maya as odd. There was nothing suspicious about taking residential streets in a small town. "I stopped at Wilson's Grocery to pick up a few things for my grandmother," she said, nodding toward the shopping bag on her back seat. "This route is more direct from there." Brennan handed back her registration but kept her license. "Wait here," he ordered, then returned to his patrol car. Maya sat perfectly still, watching in her rearview mirror as Brennan spoke into his radio. The stop was already unusual. Most routine traffic stops began with an officer explaining the reason: speeding, a broken taillight, running a stop sign. Brennan hadn't mentioned any violation. After several minutes, Brennan returned, his demeanor even more rigid than before. "Step out of the vehicle, please," he instructed. Maya's heart rate picked up, but her voice remained steady. "Officer Brennan, I'd like to know the reason for this stop." "I don't believe I've violated any traffic laws." Brennan's jaw tightened. "Your vehicle matches the description of one involved in an incident earlier today. Step out of the car now." Maya knew her rights, both as a citizen and as a law enforcement officer herself. "What kind of incident? And what's the vehicle description you're looking for?" "Dark sedan, out-of-state plates," Brennan snapped. "Now for the last time, exit the vehicle." The description was so vague it could match hundreds of cars. Maya considered her options. She could identify herself as an FBI agent now, but something told her to wait. If this was just a misunderstanding, escalating the situation might make things worse. Better to comply and sort it out calmly. "I'm going to exit the vehicle slowly," Maya announced, reaching for the door handle. Once outside, the cool night air hit her face. Standing beside her car, Maya was suddenly aware of how isolated this street was. No other cars had passed since she'd been pulled over, and the nearest house had dark windows. "Place your hands on the hood of your car," Brennan instructed. Maya complied, but couldn't stay silent anymore. "Officer, I'd like to understand what's happening. What specifically was this vehicle allegedly involved in?" Brennan moved closer, his presence intimidating. "You asking a lot of questions for someone who claims to just be visiting Grandma." "What are you hiding?" "Nothing," Maya said firmly. "I'm simply trying to understand why I've been stopped and asked to exit my vehicle when I haven't committed any traffic violation." "We had reports of drug activity involving a car like yours," Brennan said, his tone suggesting he just made this up. "And you're taking back roads, acting nervous." "I'm not nervous," Maya replied evenly. "And I'm not involved in any drug activity. I'm a federal agent with the FBI." She decided it was time to identify herself. "My credentials are in my purse on the passenger seat. I'd like to show them to you." Brennan laughed, a short, dismissive sound. "Sure you are. And I'm the Director of Homeland Security." His disbelief was obvious, but Maya pressed on. "I'm serious, Officer Brennan. I'm assigned to the field office in D.C. My badge and ID are in my purse. You can verify my identity." "Turn around," Brennan ordered, ignoring her statement. "Hands behind your back." Maya felt the situation spiraling. "Officer, this is unnecessary. If you'd just let me show you my credentials," I said, "turn around." Brennan's voice rose sharply as he unclipped his handcuffs. Maya knew the potential danger of resisting, even verbally. As a black woman facing an increasingly hostile officer on a deserted street, her FBI training told her one thing: de-escalate, survive the encounter, fight the injustice later through proper channels. She turned around slowly. "This is a mistake," she said clearly. I've done nothing wrong and I am a federal agent. The cold metal of handcuffs snapped around her wrists, uncomfortably tight. You people always think you know the law better than those enforcing it, Brennan muttered as he secured the cuffs. The phrase, "you people," hung in the air between them. Maya had heard those words before, knew exactly what they meant coming from someone like Brennan. She took a deep breath, keeping her voice level. "Officer, I understand you're doing your job, but this is a misunderstanding that could be cleared up quickly if you'd check my credentials." Brennan ignored her, patting down her pockets in a search that felt more invasive than necessary. "What's in the trunk?" "Just my overnight bag," Maya replied. "Officer, may I ask where this is going?" "Am I under arrest?"
If so, for what?
"Suspicious behavior, possible drug possession, and now claiming to be a federal agent." Brennan listed, each charge more absurd than the last. "We'll sort it out at the station." Maya tried once more. "My FBI credentials are in my purse. One look would clear this up." "We'll check everything at the station," Brennan repeated, steering her toward his patrol car. "Anyone can buy a fake badge online these days." Maya felt herself being pushed into the back seat of the police cruiser, the door slamming behind her. Through the divider, she watched as Brennan returned to her car, using his flashlight to peer inside. He opened the passenger door and rummaged through her purse but didn't remove anything. Maya's thoughts raced. Her grandmother would be worried when she didn't arrive. Her phone was still in her purse, so she couldn't call anyone. And now she was handcuffed in the back of a police car, being taken to the station for offenses she hadn't committed. As Brennan started the engine, Maya saw him watching her in the rearview mirror. "Visiting your grandmother, huh?" he said skeptically. "And you just happen to be passing through the same area where we've had drug dealers from out of state?" "My grandmother's name is Rose Washington. She lives at 1487 Maple Drive," Maya stated clearly. "You can call her to verify. And as I said, I'm an FBI agent. This entire stop is unwarranted." Brennan's eyes narrowed in the mirror. "We'll see about that." The drive to the police station was short. Riverside was a small town, and the municipal building that housed both the town hall and police department was only about a mile away. Maya used the time to center herself, to plan what she would say and do once they arrived. She knew the system from both sides. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about accountability. The Riverside police station was a small brick building with just 4 patrol cars in the lot, including Brennan's. As he led her inside, handcuffed and hyper-aware of the indignity of her situation, Maya noticed the surprised looks from the 2 officers behind the front desk. "Got a live one, Brennan?" asked an older officer with gray hair and a lined face. "Claims she's FBI," Brennan replied with a smirk. "Caught her taking back roads, acting suspicious. Possible drug connection." The desk sergeant raised his eyebrows, looking Maya over with open curiosity. "FBI, huh?" "Yes," Maya said firmly, addressing the sergeant directly. "Special Agent Maya Washington, assigned to the DC field office. My credentials are in my purse, which Officer Brennan has from my vehicle. I'd appreciate if someone would verify my identity immediately, so we can clear up this misunderstanding." The sergeant glanced at Brennan, then back at Maya. Something in his expression suggested he wasn't entirely comfortable with the situation. "Her purse is still in her car," Brennan said dismissively. "We'll process her first, then check her story." "I'd like my phone call, please," Maya stated, keeping her voice calm and professional despite the anger building inside her. "And I want to be clear that this stop and detention are completely unwarranted and potentially illegal." Brennan's face flushed. "You can have your call after booking, and you might want to watch those accusations if you don't want resisting arrest added to your charges." The threat was clear, but Maya stood her ground. "I'm not resisting anything. I'm asserting my rights and my identity as a federal agent." The desk sergeant shifted uncomfortably. "Maybe we should check her ID, Brennan." "If she really is FBI, she's not," Brennan cut him off. "Trust me, I can spot a liar. And if she is, she can prove it after booking. That's procedure." It wasn't procedure, and everyone in the room knew it. But as Brennan led Maya toward the processing area, none of the other officers intervened. Maya caught the eye of a young female officer who quickly looked away, unwilling to challenge her colleague. This was how systems of injustice perpetuated themselves, Maya thought, not just through the actions of people like Brennan, but through the silence of those who knew better yet said nothing. As Brennan pushed her toward the fingerprinting station, Maya made a decision. This incident wouldn't be swept under the rug or handled quietly. Whatever happened next, she would ensure it brought real change, not just for herself, but for the community her grandmother had called home for 4 decades. The booking officer, a thin man with nervous hands, looked uncertain as Brennan brought Maya forward. "What's the charge exactly?" he asked. Brennan hesitated for a fraction of a second. Suspicious behavior, false impersonation of a federal officer, and resisting a lawful stop. "I did not resist," Maya stated clearly, making sure everyone nearby could hear. "And I am a federal agent, as my credentials will prove once Officer Brennan retrieves them from my vehicle." The tension in the room was palpable as the booking officer looked between them, clearly uncomfortable with the situation unfolding before him. Maya stood perfectly still as the booking officer took her fingerprints, pressing each finger against the scanner with methodical precision. The handcuffs had been removed for the process, but Officer Brennan hovered nearby, his hand resting on his weapon as if she might attempt to flee at any moment. "Name?" the booking officer asked, his eyes fixed on his computer screen. "Special Agent Maya Washington. Federal Bureau of Investigation," she answered clearly, making sure everyone in the room heard her. The booking officer glanced up, then looked at Brennan, who rolled his eyes. "Just put down Maya Washington," Brennan instructed. "We'll add the impersonating an officer charge once we confirm she's lying." Maya maintained her composure, though inside her anger was building. This wasn't just about her anymore. How many others had Brennan treated this way who didn't have her resources or knowledge of the system? "I'd like to make my phone call now," Maya stated, looking directly at the booking officer rather than Brennan. "After we finish processing," Brennan cut in before the booking officer could respond. "Actually," the officer said hesitantly, "she's entitled to her call now if she wants it." Brennan's face tightened, but he didn't argue. "Fine, make it quick." The booking officer led Maya to a wall-mounted phone. As she reached for the receiver, Maya realized she faced a dilemma. Who should she call? Her grandmother would be worried sick by now, but Rose was 78 years old with a heart condition. The last thing Maya wanted was to cause her more stress. She could call her supervisor at the FBI, but it was Friday evening, and the bureaucracy of an official response might take hours. She dialed a number from memory, relieved when it was answered on the 3rd ring. "Hello?" A familiar voice came through the line. "Darnell, it's Washington," Maya said, keeping her voice steady. "I need your help. I've been detained by Riverside PD on my way to my grandmother's. Officer, James Brennan refuses to check my credentials and is booking me on false charges, including impersonating a federal agent. What the hell?" Darnell's shock was evident even through the poor connection. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," Maya assured him, aware of Brennan watching her closely. "But I need someone to contact Captain Phillips at the Riverside station. They need to verify my identity and end this farce." "I'm on it," Darnell said immediately. "Hang tight. I'll make some calls and head your way. Should be there in about 2 hours. Thanks." "And Darnell? Could you call my grandmother too? Tell her I'll be delayed, but not to worry." "Will do. Stay strong, Washington." As Maya hung up, she noticed a subtle shift in the room's atmosphere. Her calm, professional handling of the call had made an impression. The booking officer was looking at her with something approaching respect, while another officer who had been observing from across the room was now whispering to a colleague. Brennan, however, seemed only more determined. "Let's continue," he said sharply, gesturing for Maya to follow the booking officer back to the processing desk. "Officer Brennan," Maya said evenly as they walked, "this situation could be resolved immediately if you'd simply check my credentials in my purse. The longer this continues, the more serious the consequences will be." "Is that a threat?" Brennan stepped closer, his voice low and hostile. "Not at all," Maya replied calmly. "It's a statement of fact. False arrest of a federal agent is a serious matter." "If you're really FBI," he countered, "then you know procedure. We verify everything properly, not just take your word for it." The booking officer cleared his throat. "Actually, Brennan, maybe we should check her ID if she really is FBI." "She's not," Brennan snapped. "And I don't appreciate you questioning my judgment, Cooper." The booking officer, Cooper, looked away, unwilling to challenge Brennan further. Maya filed his name away mentally. He wasn't brave enough to stand up to Brennan directly, but at least he'd shown some doubt. The next hour dragged on as Maya was photographed, her personal information entered into the system, and a basic health screening completed. Throughout the process, she remained composed but firm, repeating her identity and requesting that her credentials be checked. Each time, Brennan deflected or ignored her. More officers had gathered now, drawn by the unusual situation. Maya counted 5 in total, including Brennan. 2 seemed uncomfortable with the proceedings, while the others maintained neutral expressions, unwilling to get involved. As Cooper finished entering data into the system, the front door of the station swung open. A heavy-set older man in civilian clothes walked in, his face lined with years of experience and his gaze sharp as he surveyed the room. The atmosphere changed instantly as officers straightened up. "Captain Phillips," Cooper acknowledged with a nod. The captain's eyes landed on Maya. "What's going on here?" "I got a call about an FBI agent being detained." Before Brennan could speak, Maya stepped forward. "Captain Phillips, I'm Special Agent Maya Washington with the FBI field office in D.C. I was pulled over by Officer Brennan while driving to visit my grandmother, Rose Washington, who lives on Maple Drive. Despite identifying myself as a federal agent, Officer Brennan arrested me without checking my credentials, which are in my purse in my vehicle." The captain's eyebrows rose as he looked at Brennan. "That true, James?" Brennan's face had reddened. She matched a description we had for a suspicious vehicle. "And anyone can claim to be FBI. I was following procedure." "By not checking her credentials?" Phillips asked skeptically. "I was going to," Brennan defended himself, "after processing, for safety." Captain Phillips shook his head slightly, then turned back to Maya. "I apologize for the situation, Agent Washington. Where are your credentials now?" "In my purse, which should still be in my car," Maya replied. Phillips nodded to one of the officers. "Taylor, get her purse from her vehicle." He handed over Maya's car keys, which had been placed in a property bag on the desk. Officer Taylor nodded and left quickly. The room fell into an uncomfortable silence as they waited. Brennan stood rigidly by the booking desk, his jaw tight and his eyes fixed on the wall behind Maya. 5 minutes later, Taylor returned with Maya's purse. He handed it directly to Captain Phillips, who looked at Maya. "If you could show me your credentials, Agent Washington." Maya reached into her purse and removed her FBI badge and ID card, presenting them to the captain. He examined them carefully, then made a quick call to verify her identity with the FBI field office. After a brief conversation, he hung up and turned to the room. "This is indeed Special Agent Maya Washington," he announced, his expression grave as he looked at Brennan. "Officer Brennan, my office now." He turned back to Maya. "Agent Washington, I sincerely apologize for this incident. You're free to go, of course. I'd appreciate a few minutes of your time first, if you're willing." Maya nodded. "Of course, Captain." As Brennan followed Phillips toward his office, his face was a mask of barely contained anger. He didn't look at Maya as he passed. The other officers avoided eye contact except for Cooper, who gave her an apologetic nod. Phillips gestured toward a small conference room. "Please, Agent Washington. Would you like some water or coffee?" "Water would be fine," Maya replied, following him into the room. Once seated with a bottle of water in front of her, Maya took a moment to gather her thoughts. Captain Phillips sat across from her, his expression troubled. "I want to apologize again for what happened tonight," he began. "This isn't how we operate, and Officer Brennan's actions do not reflect the values of this department." Maya took a sip of water before responding. "With all due respect, Captain, when 5 officers stand by and watch while one officer abuses his authority, it does reflect on your department. Not one of them intervened or insisted on checking my credentials, even after I repeatedly identified myself as a federal agent." Phillips had the grace to look ashamed. "You're right. That's a failure of leadership, my leadership. I can assure you that this will be addressed." "How?" Maya asked directly. "Will Officer Brennan face any real consequences? Or will this be handled quietly to avoid embarrassment to the department?" The captain seemed taken aback by her directness. "There will be disciplinary action, of course, and I'd like to offer you the opportunity to file a formal complaint." Maya considered her options. A complaint would create a record but might not lead to meaningful change. Brennan might be suspended briefly or given additional training, but the systemic issues would remain unaddressed. "Captain Phillips, I grew up hearing stories about Riverside from my grandmother. She's lived here for over 40 years and has seen promises of change come and go. What happened to me tonight didn't happen in a vacuum. It happened because Officer Brennan felt comfortable acting that way, and others felt comfortable letting him. Phillips didn't immediately respond, which Maya took as a sign he was actually listening. I could file a complaint, she continued. I could even pursue legal action. But what I'd rather do is address the root cause. What are you suggesting? Phillips asked cautiously. Before Maya could answer, there was a knock at the conference room door. An officer peered in. Sorry to interrupt, Captain, but there's an FBI agent here asking for Agent Washington. Says his name is Darnell Tucker. Send him in, Phillips said. Darnell entered the room, his eyes quickly assessing Maya for any signs of mistreatment. Finding none, his posture relaxed slightly, though his expression remained serious. You okay, Washington? He asked. Maya nodded. I'm fine. Thank you for coming and for making those calls. Darnell turned to Phillips, extending his hand. Agent Tucker, D.C. Field Office. I understand there was a situation involving my colleague. A serious misunderstanding that shouldn't have happened, Phillips acknowledged, shaking Darnell's hand. We were just discussing next steps. Actually, Maya said, I was about to propose an alternative to a standard complaint. She looked between the two men. Captain, I believe there are deeper issues within your department that need to be addressed. Issues of bias, procedure, and accountability. Phillips shifted uncomfortably but didn't disagree. Instead of filing a complaint that will lead to minimal consequences and no real change, Maya continued, I'd like to propose something different. I'm listening, Phillips said cautiously. Maya took a deep breath. The idea had been forming since she first sat in Brennan's patrol car, and now it was clear in her mind. This wasn't just about one night or one officer. It was about transforming a system that had allowed tonight's events to happen in the first place. I think it's time for the Riverside Police Department to face its problems directly, she said, and I'm prepared to help you do that, if you're willing to commit to real change. The room fell silent as both men looked at her with surprise. Whatever they had been expecting, it wasn't this. Maya knew her next words would set a course that none of them had anticipated when the night began. But sometimes the most courageous response to injustice wasn't anger or retaliation. It was transformation. Maya looked directly at Captain Phillips. I want to meet with your entire department, including Officer Brennan, and the town's police oversight committee. Phillips blinked, clearly surprised by the request. You want to meet with everyone? Tonight? Not tonight, Maya clarified. I still need to see my grandmother. But soon, within the next few days. Darnell gave her a questioning look. Washington, what are you thinking? You know we could file serious charges here. Maya nodded. I know, and maybe that's what should happen. She turned back to Phillips. Captain, what do you think would happen if I filed a formal complaint against Officer Brennan? Be honest, Phillips sighed, rubbing his forehead. There would be an internal investigation. Brennan would probably be placed on administrative leave. Given the circumstances and your status as a federal agent, there might be disciplinary action. And then, Maya pressed, and then things would eventually go back to normal, Phillips admitted reluctantly. Exactly, Maya said. A single officer might face consequences, but nothing would really change. And I'm not interested in punishment for punishment's sake. I'm interested in transformation. Phillips looked skeptical. That's a noble goal, Agent Washington, but what exactly are you proposing? Maya leaned forward. I specialize in investigating police corruption and misconduct. I've seen departments across the country struggle with the same issues I witnessed tonight. The problem isn't just individual officers, it's culture, training, accountability systems, community relations. She paused, making sure both men were following her. What I'm proposing is a 6-month program where I work directly with the Riverside Police Department on addressing these issues systematically. Not as an outside investigator looking to assign blame, but as a partner in creating meaningful change. Darnell's eyebrows shot up. Washington, that's not— Hear me out, Maya interrupted gently. This wouldn't be official FBI business. It would be my own initiative, conducted during my personal time. I visit my grandmother regularly anyway. I could coordinate these visits with training sessions, community meetings, and review of department policies. Phillips looked intrigued but cautious. And what would this program involve specifically? Bias training? Proper stop procedures, community relations, accountability mechanisms Maya listed, but tailored to Riverside's specific needs and challenges. This isn't about implementing some generic program. It's about creating something that works for this community. And what would you want in return? Phillips asked, the wariness of a small-town police captain evident in his voice. Complete transparency, Maya answered immediately, about tonight's incident and about any other issues within the department. I can't help fix problems that are hidden from me, and I want Officer Brennan's full participation. At the mention of Brennan, Phillips's expression darkened. He may not be receptive to this approach. That's putting it mildly, Darnell muttered. I understand that, Maya acknowledged, but his participation is non-negotiable. He doesn't have to like me or even agree with me, but he does need to engage with the process. Phillips tapped his fingers on the table, considering, and if he refuses? Then he should face the full consequences of his actions tonight, Maya said firmly. I'm offering an alternative to filing charges and pursuing legal action, Captain. But that offer depends on full cooperation. The room fell silent as Phillips contemplated her proposal. Maya could see him weighing the options, the potential embarrassment and disruption of formal charges against a program that, while challenging, could ultimately strengthen his department. I need to think about this, Phillips finally said, and discuss it with the mayor and town council. This isn't a decision I can make unilaterally. I understand, Maya nodded. I'll be at my grandmother's house until Sunday evening. You can reach me there. Darnell had been watching the exchange with growing concern. As Maya stood to leave, he touched her arm gently. Can I talk to you outside for a minute? Maya nodded, then turned back to Phillips. Thank you for your time, Captain. I hope we can find a path forward that serves everyone in this community. Outside the station, in the cool night air, Darnell didn't hide his disbelief. Have you lost your mind? That man had you in handcuffs less than 2 hours ago, and now you want to work with him? I want to fix a broken system, Maya corrected him. And sometimes that means working with the people who represent its worst problems. This isn't your responsibility, Washington, Darnell argued. You were the victim here, Maya shook her head. This isn't about what happened to me. It's about what happens to people who don't have FBI badges to protect them. People like my grandmother's neighbors who've been dealing with this kind of treatment for decades. Darnell sighed, recognizing the determined look in his colleague's eyes. You've already made up your mind, haven't you? I think I made it up the moment Brennan put me in those handcuffs, Maya admitted. I could fight this the traditional way. File charges, maybe win some kind of settlement or see Brennan suspended. Or I could try something different, something that might actually create lasting change. And if they don't agree to your terms, then I'll pursue every legal option available to me, Maya said firmly. But I'm hoping it won't come to that. Darnell shook his head but smiled slightly. You're something else, Washington. Need a ride to your grandmother's? That would be great. My car is still here, but I think I've had enough driving for one night. 20 minutes later, Maya was finally knocking on her grandmother's door. Despite the late hour, Rose Washington opened it immediately, her face lined with worry. Baby girl, she exclaimed, pulling Maya into a tight hug. Your friend called and said you'd been detained. What happened? Maya held her grandmother close, drawing strength from the familiar scent of her perfume and the warmth of her embrace. It's a long story, Grandma. Let's go inside. Over slices of the now cold sweet potato pie, Maya recounted the evening's events. Rose listened without interrupting, though her expression shifted between anger, worry, and finally, a strange sort of pride. So you're planning to teach the police how to do their jobs? She asked when Maya finished. Not exactly, Maya clarified. I'm offering to help them identify and address their problems. Whether they actually want that help remains to be seen. Rose reached across the table and squeezed Maya's hand. You know, you remind me so much of your grandfather right now. He always believed in fixing systems from within, even when others wanted to tear them down completely. I remember, Maya smiled softly. He used to say destruction is easy. Building something better takes courage. And patience, Rose added, which that man had in abundance. She studied her granddaughter carefully. Are you sure about this, Maya? It won't be easy. I'm sure it's worth trying, Maya replied. That doesn't mean it will work. Well, if anyone can make it work, it's you. Rose patted her hand. Now eat your pie before it gets any colder and then get some rest. Sounds like you've got a busy weekend ahead of you. Saturday morning brought sunshine and a phone call from Captain Phillips. Maya was helping her grandmother with breakfast when the call came through. Agent Washington, Phillips began formally. I've spoken with the mayor and several council members. We'd like to accept your proposal with some conditions. Maya moved to the living room for privacy. I'm listening. We want this to be a collaborative effort, not just you telling us what we're doing wrong, Phillips said. And we'd like to limit the initial commitment to 3 months with the option to extend if we're seeing positive results. That's reasonable, Maya agreed. What about Officer Brennan? There was a pause on the line. He's resistant, but he's been given a choice: participate in the program or face suspension pending a full investigation into last night's incident. And his decision? He's agreed to participate, Phillips said, though his tone suggested Brennan's agreement had been anything but enthusiastic. But I should warn you, he's not happy about it. I don't need him to be happy, Maya replied. I just need him to show up and engage honestly with the process. There's one more thing, Phillips added. The Oversight Committee has requested a meeting with you tomorrow before you leave town. Would you be available at 10 a.m.? I'll be there, Maya confirmed. After hanging up, she rejoined her grandmother in the kitchen. Good news? Rose asked, noting Maya's thoughtful expression. They've accepted my proposal. I'm meeting with the Oversight Committee tomorrow morning. Rose nodded approvingly. You know, word travels fast in a small town. My phone's been ringing since dawn with neighbors who heard about what happened. People are talking, Maya. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Maya asked, helping herself to more coffee. Could be both, Rose said pragmatically. Some folks will see this as long overdue. Others won't appreciate an outsider telling them how to run things, FBI badge or not. Maya considered this. I'm not coming in as an outsider with all the answers. I'm offering to work with them to find solutions together. That's a fine line to walk, Rose observed. And speaking of walking, why don't we take a stroll around the neighborhood this afternoon? Might be good for you to reintroduce yourself to some of the community. Maya agreed, recognizing the wisdom in her grandmother's suggestion. If she was going to help bridge the gap between the police and the community they served, she needed to understand both sides. The meeting with the Oversight Committee the next morning was tense but productive. The committee consisted of 5 members, 2 town council representatives, a local business owner, a retired judge, and a community activist. Maya presented her proposal formally, outlining her qualifications, her vision for the program, and her commitment to creating sustainable change. This all sounds very noble, said the retired judge, a white-haired man named Henderson. But I'm curious why you're offering to do this rather than pursuing action against Officer Brennan. You'd certainly have grounds. Because punishing one officer doesn't solve the underlying problems, Maya explained. I could file charges, possibly see Officer Brennan disciplined or even fired, and then what? Another officer takes his place operating within the same system, with the same lack of accountability and community trust. And you think you can change that in 3 months? Asked one of the council members skeptically. I think we can start changing it, Maya corrected. Real transformation takes time, but we have to begin somewhere. The community activist, a woman in her 60s who introduced herself as Dr. Chen, leaned forward. I've been pushing for police reform in Riverside for 15 years. What makes you think you'll succeed where others have failed? It was a fair question, and Maya appreciated the directness. I don't know that I will succeed, she admitted, but I bring a unique perspective as both a law enforcement officer and someone who experienced misconduct firsthand. I understand police procedure and culture from the inside, but I also understand why communities, particularly communities of color, often don't trust those sworn to protect them. By the end of the meeting, the committee had voted unanimously to support the program, with the stipulation that Maya provide monthly progress reports. As people gathered their things to leave, Dr. Chen approached Maya. I hope this works, she said quietly. This town needs it. I do too, Maya replied honestly. And I'll need allies in the community. People who can help build bridges. Dr. Chen smiled slightly. You might have just found one. She handed Maya a business card. Call me when you're ready to start. I know some people you should talk to. As Maya left the town hall, she spotted a familiar figure leaning against a police cruiser in the parking lot. Officer Brennan watched her approach, his posture tense and his expression unreadable. Officer Brennan? Maya acknowledged him calmly. Agent Washington, he replied stiffly. Looks like we'll be seeing a lot of each other. It seems that way. Brennan's jaw tightened. Just so we're clear, I don't need you to fix me or this department. We were doing just fine before you came along. Maya met his gaze steadily. Then you have nothing to worry about with this program. If everything's as fine as you say, that will become evident. This is a waste of time, he muttered. Maybe, Maya conceded. Or maybe it's an opportunity. That's really up to you. As Brennan stalked away, Maya watched him go with mixed emotions. The man clearly resented her and the program she was proposing. Working with him would be challenging at best. But his resistance was precisely why this approach was necessary. Addressing systemic problems meant confronting the most difficult aspects of police culture head-on, not just dealing with those already open to change. Returning to her grandmother's house to pack for her trip back to D.C., Maya found herself both apprehensive and strangely energized by the path ahead. What had begun as a simple visit to her grandmother had become something far more significant, not just for her, but potentially for the entire community. As she loaded her overnight bag into her car, Rose came out onto the porch. You sure about this, baby girl? She asked one more time. It won't be easy coming back here every few weeks to face that man and his attitude. Maya smiled at her grandmother. I'm sure it's worth trying. Sometimes the most courageous response to injustice isn't fighting back or walking away. It's staying engaged and working to create change, especially when it's difficult. Rose nodded proudly. Your grandfather would have said the exact same thing. She hugged Maya tightly. Drive safe. And call me when you get home. As Maya drove out of Riverside, her encounter with Officer Brennan still fresh in her mind, she knew the real work was just beginning. The coming months would test her patience, her skills, and her conviction that transformation was possible, even in the most resistant systems. But for now, she felt certain she had made the right choice, not just for herself, but for her grandmother's community, and perhaps for police departments beyond Riverside as well. 6 weeks into Maya's program, the first real breakthrough came from an unexpected source. The community center was packed for the town hall meeting, the second one Maya had organized since beginning her work with the Riverside Police Department. The first session had been tense and unproductive, with residents venting decades of frustration while officers sat stone-faced, arms crossed, defensively. Tonight felt different. Maya had spent the intervening weeks conducting one-on-one interviews with community members and officers alike, building trust on both sides. She'd also implemented the first phase of her training program, focusing on traffic stop procedures and de-escalation techniques. Before we opened the floor for discussion, Maya addressed the crowd. Officer Brennan has something he'd like to share. A murmur rippled through the room as Brennan approached the microphone. He looked uncomfortable in his dress uniform, his posture rigid. 6 weeks ago, he'd barely spoken during training sessions, participating only as much as required to avoid disciplinary action. Maya had wondered if he'd ever truly engage with the process. I've been an officer in Riverside for 12 years, Brennan began, his voice tight. In that time, I've made thousands of traffic stops. 6 weeks ago, I stopped Agent Washington's vehicle and I made assumptions. I acted on those assumptions instead of following proper procedure. He paused, looking down at his notes. The department has protocols for checking identification and handling traffic stops. I didn't follow them that night, and that was wrong. The admission wasn't particularly emotional or elaborate, but coming from Brennan, it was significant. Maya watched as he continued. As part of this program, we've been reviewing body camera footage from various stops, including my own. Brennan's jaw tightened. It's not easy to watch yourself on camera and see things you didn't want to see, but it's necessary. When he finished his brief statement and returned to his seat, the mood in the room had shifted. It wasn't forgiveness exactly, but it was acknowledgement, the first essential step toward change. Later that night, as Maya was gathering her materials, Brennan approached her. That was, he hesitated, difficult. I know, Maya replied simply. I'm not saying I agree with everything in your program, he added quickly, but the body camera reviews, that was a good idea. Makes it harder to deny what's right in front of you. It wasn't an apology for his actions the night he'd arrested her, but it was something. A crack in the wall. Maya nodded, recognizing the significance of the moment. See you at training on Thursday, she said. Brennan gave a curt nod and left. As Maya drove to her grandmother's house where she stayed during her weekly visits to Riverside, she reflected on the progress so far. The program was facing resistance from some officers who saw it as an attack on their authority, but others, particularly younger officers and those with closer community ties, had embraced the opportunity for change. "How did it go?" Rose asked when Maya arrived, setting a cup of tea in front of her granddaughter. "Brennan acknowledged he was wrong," Maya said, still sounding surprised. "Publicly?" Rose raised her eyebrows. "Well now, that's something I never thought I'd hear." She sat down across from Maya. "You know, people are talking about your program all over town." Mrs. Lewis from church said her grandson wasn't pulled over for the first time in months when he drove through the east side last week. 1 traffic stop doesn't mean systemic change, Maya cautioned. "Of course not," Rose agreed, "but it's a start." By the third month, the statistical data was beginning to tell a story. Traffic stops in predominantly black neighborhoods had decreased by 30%, while officer compliance with proper stop procedures had improved across the board. The department had implemented new documentation requirements that Maya had suggested, creating greater accountability. Not everyone was pleased with the changes. At a town council meeting, several residents complained about decreased police presence in certain neighborhoods. "Officers are afraid to do their jobs now," one man argued. "They're worried about being called racist if they stop someone." Captain Phillips addressed the concern directly. "Our officers are still doing their jobs. They're just doing them differently. We're focusing on real threats to public safety, not minor infractions that historically led to disproportionate stops of certain community members." Maya was proud of Phillips in that moment. When they'd first started working together, he'd been hesitant to acknowledge any problems within his department. Now he was publicly defending reforms. The most difficult work happened in the training sessions. Maya had designed an intensive program that combined practical skills with deeper discussions about bias, history, and community relations. The sessions often became heated, particularly when officers were confronted with evidence of disparities in their own policing patterns. "This is bull," one veteran officer had declared during a particularly tense session on implicit bias. "You're calling us all racist because of one bad stop." "I'm not calling anyone a racist," Maya had countered calmly. "I'm asking you to consider the data and what it might tell us about patterns we may not even be aware of." "Easy for you to say from your FBI ivory tower," the officer shot back. To everyone's surprise, it was Brennan who spoke up. "She's not just talking from an ivory tower, Anderson. She's talking from experience. My experience with her. I thought I was just following my gut that night, but my gut was wrong. And the data shows it wasn't just that one time." The room had fallen silent. Brennan wasn't known for speaking up in training, and he certainly wasn't known for admitting mistakes. After that session, Maya found Brennan in the break room, staring into his coffee cup. "Thank you for what you said today," she told him. Brennan shrugged. "Wasn't about you. Anderson needed to hear it, and he wouldn't have listened to you. Still, thank you." As the 3-month mark approached, the initial time frame they'd agreed upon, Maya prepared a comprehensive report for the Oversight Committee. The data showed promising changes: improved compliance with department policies, reduced racial disparities in enforcement, and the beginning of better community relations as measured by resident surveys. But numbers couldn't capture the qualitative changes Maya had witnessed: the gradual shift in language used by officers, the increased willingness to question assumptions, the more collaborative approach to community concerns. On the day Maya was scheduled to present her findings, she arrived at the station to find an unusual scene. The briefing room had been rearranged with officers seated alongside community members, including Dr. Chen, the activist who had become one of Maya's closest allies in Riverside. "What's going on?" Maya asked Captain Phillips. "Change of plans," he explained. "Instead of presenting to just the Oversight Committee, we thought it was important for everyone involved in the program to hear directly from you, and for you to hear from them." For the next 2 hours, Maya listened as officers and residents shared their perspectives on the program. There were criticisms and suggestions, certainly, but there was also genuine appreciation for the changes taking place, however preliminary they might be. 3 months ago, I wouldn't have set foot in this building," one elderly resident testified, Now I actually know some of these officers by name. That's something. When Officer Brennan's turn came to speak, the room grew quiet. I was against this program from the start, he acknowledged bluntly. Thought it was just about making me the scapegoat for larger problems. And I resented Agent Washington for, he paused, searching for words, for exposing things I didn't want to see in myself. Maya watched him carefully, noting the effort it took for him to continue. I'm still not comfortable with some aspects of the program, but I can't deny that it's making me a better officer, making us all better officers, and that's what should matter. When the meeting concluded, the Oversight Committee voted unanimously to extend the program for another 3 months. As people filtered out of the room, Maya found herself face to face with Brennan. Congratulations, he said stiffly. Looks like you'll be sticking around. Looks that way, Maya agreed. Then after a moment's hesitation, you know, when this all started, I wasn't sure you'd last the full 3 months. Makes 2 of us, Brennan admitted. But I'm glad I did. It wasn't friendship. It might never be. But it was professional respect. Hard-earned on both sides. 6 months after that fateful traffic stop, Maya stood at a podium in Washington, D.C., presenting the results of the Riverside program at a national law enforcement conference. Beside her stood Captain Phillips and, surprisingly, Officer Brennan, who had gradually become one of the program's most effective advocates within the department. The Riverside model, as it was now being called, had gained attention across the country. Other small departments were reaching out, interested in implementing similar reforms. The key insight from Riverside, Maya told the assembled officers and officials, isn't that we found some magic solution to deeply entrenched problems. It's that meaningful change requires honest accountability, community involvement, and the courage to examine uncomfortable truths from all sides. As Maya concluded her presentation, she caught Brennan's eye. He gave her the slightest nod, an acknowledgement of how far they'd both come. Later, as they prepared to return to Riverside, Brennan approached her. I've been meaning to ask you something, he said. That night when Phillips offered to make the whole thing go away quietly, why didn't you take that option? Or push for me to be fired? Either would have been easier than what you did. Maya considered the question, because easy wasn't the point. Justice was. And sometimes justice isn't about punishment. It's about creating the change we need to see, especially when it seems impossible. Brennan nodded slowly. I arrested you because of who I thought you were when I saw you, he admitted. I never expected you'd see something in me worth saving. It wasn't about saving you, Maya clarified. It was about transforming a broken system. You were just part of that system. Well, whatever the reason, Brennan said awkwardly. Thank you. As they boarded the plane back to Riverside, Maya thought about her grandmother's community and how much work still remained. The changes they'd made were significant but fragile. Sustaining them would require ongoing commitment from everyone involved. But for the first time, she believed it was truly possible. What had begun as an unjust arrest had become a model for reconciliation and reform, not through avoidance or vengeance, but through the harder, braver path of engagement and transformation. It wasn't a perfect ending. Real change never is. But it was a beginning that would ripple far beyond one small town, all because she had chosen the most courageous response when faced with injustice, to transform it into opportunity.